Sabot here from Line Group Services with Darren, and today we wanted to talk about our supply chain consulting service, which we offer a review. And then I wanted to ask Darren of like what are we doing in terms of the supply chain review?
So I think with any, when you reach out to a consultancy service, the first thing is to understand what you're reaching out for, what it is that you want to achieve, and then trying to understand that and what you're going to be asking for. So that sounds dead simple, but it's not. It's like any project that you're going to write down what the business case is and what the project plan is. You're going to put that together once you've said, here's the desired outcome. So that starts with speaking to such as ourselves and a consultation over the phone of, right, is kind of what we're looking for, and then we progress from there, really.
So if we have, if we receive that, what's the goals? And we need to see, each part of the supply chain, the logistic, the warehousing, the shipping, like how would you actually approach each part? What do you look for? What, based on what is asked from us? What's the problem in the business? How would you approach those parts of the supply chain?
So we start with essentially, the emphasis is on what you need to achieve and where you think the issues might be. And sometimes when you go into a business and you start doing the analysis, it's actually not the area of concern that you thought was causing you all the problems, or maybe you're leaking money in a particular area, or you've got efficiency dropouts and stuff like that. It's not always the area that you think it's in. It's sometimes where the experts like ourselves come in and say, no, we're looking in the wrong place here. You've got problems there, but actually that problem is an upstream problem that's causing downstream issues. And so solve the upstream problem and you solve the downstream one. So it's basically, we would talk to you, we would ask for a request for information RFI saying, okay, tell us what it is you think you need to address. And that may be a cost efficiency, it may be a service issue, it could be a business improvement, it could be a complete transformation. And the size of the project, if you like, and we'll call everything a project, because essentially we're gonna start with what we have as the challenge, and we're going to get to what we need as the outcome. So it starts with that request for information and you outlining where you think the areas of concern are, and giving us a broad overview of how your business pulls together, how it works, and then from that we'd kind of look at the areas where we think that we'd like to look in more detail at. And the next stage of that would be, we'd put a report together saying these are the areas of focus that we need you to address, and we'd like to come in and visit, spend a deep dive analysis now, where we can kind of roughly work out that if we're there for sort of 10 days, 20 days, whatever we decide that would need, and with both parties feel comfortable with, we can do the actual deep dive analysis. And that would involve working with the guys, the stakeholders that are responsible for the relative areas. So you mentioned, it could be shipping, it could be you've got huge issues around your shipping process, it could be it's your distribution. And we as a team at Line Group Services would bring in the experts for those areas and talk with the stakeholders, with the key people, and understand from them exactly what their challenges and issues are. And then we build up from that this understanding of where we think we can put together these improvements.
Yeah, and also when we have all the reports, then we can either give all the information to you as a company, and you can execute on. But it's usually, that's the problem, that these changes, they don't get executed, they don't get acted upon. So therefore we can also do it for you and then implement all the changes. So if you have to do that, and like how could you make sure those changes are going to be implemented?
So again, it really is dependent on the size of the business, size of the project, and what elements and what moving parts are involved. That'll depend what resource we need to put to make things work and to get to the desired outcome. But what we need from the business is sort of understanding of what resource can be allocated to support that, and what kind of is kind of incremental stages, this, isn't it? Because what we're talking about is a request for information. If you can give us the information up front, that gives us a massive start point and a good, we've got a good head start there. If we then look at the next stage of putting a deep dive analysis and a bigger report together that starts to build the roadmap of how we need the project to go, and what that, if it's a change program or a turnaround, what that sort of project starts to look like. And that again is absolutely dependent on the involvement of the key stakeholders within the business, and that any information they can provide, it needs to be very open, transparent, and lots of it, lots of information. Need as much information as we can get to be able to get to the right answer. So that would be kind of the deep dive analysis stage. And in that process, we'd start putting together the kind of roadmap and slide decks of what needs to go on for us to be able to get to whatever outcomes it is that we're looking at. So and here's where you have the mini projects within the project, because at this point now we may be looking as a mini project at the shipping, and the transport element is a different piece of work, and they're separable and can be delivered as different work streams and under different mini projects at different stages, and it enables us to get to the end result without actually trying to attack everything at the same time. But if we can ring fence resource within the business to be able to say, right, okay, we're focused on the shipping part of it now, then we can make that improvement there. What you typically find is during that deep dive analysis that we'll find some of the elements of the business that will take longer to correct or to change, and that transformation will be a much bigger piece. Whereas there's always, hopefully, some low-hanging fruit, and that's because an operation may have been working in a certain way for a certain length of time and have never reviewed.
Yeah.
Often you go into businesses and there's a lack of housekeeping, and it's kind of addressing that, really. Does that make sense? And
also in that process we can find out is if you're using other suppliers, other warehousing, maybe third-party logistic providers, like, are they actually fit for your business? Are they actually delivering what your business and your customer needs? So that's when the process we can actually look at maybe changing some of the suppliers and looking into different ways how you can improve your business. So how could you manage that as well, Darren?
Well, again, this is what we don't do is go in and say, here's the deep dive analysis, here's a roadmap to do it. We can do that, and at that point, a business may they've got the option to say, so we can take it from here, and we'll manage the project now. But we can manage the project and bring in the resource to enable that. And some of that will involve the looking at the different suppliers, understanding what your key performance indicators are and how you benchmark suppliers, and whether we have the right sort of measurements in place. We always talk about managing businesses by managing measurements, and have we got the right measurements in place? That's a key thing, and understanding that actually we've got a supplier here that's very good with service levels, but very expensive, for example. And the worst of all worlds is the expensive supplier that's actually poor on service. So you've got to sort of, part of the process might be a request for tender. We put a tender document out, say we benchmark what the current suppliers are and how we can improve that. So there's a number of things that we'll look at. And again, this would all be outlined. What won't happen is we go in and entirely say, right, you've got to change everything, and you've got to change everything tomorrow. What we've got to do is say, here's what we can go after. Here's the bite-sized chunks that we can achieve. Here's how we can monitor that, so that actually you can see the progress and we can see the wins. And we may have done that low-hanging fruit, and we've got these nice little quick wins, but here's the longer-term ones, and those usually are the ones that bring the biggest prizes in terms of a big efficiency win or a big cost win. It's basically just charting that route, putting that roadmap together, and saying, here's where we can help. And don't forget, this includes all review of resources, of all resources, because often there are gaps in operations, and those gaps need filling, and it's just not being addressed. But actually, if it's a person in a role that we say, well, you need a person in this role, it's going to cost you, I don't know, 30,000 a year for the salary for that person. But actually, in doing so, you're going to save 100,000 on your shipping costs, or your transport costs, or your some other win.
Yeah, we have to make sure you have the right people in place as well, and maybe appoint someone who can maybe keep the business as effective as possible, and you maybe hire someone after we finish, and then you keep up the work which we achieved. So that's going to be important as well. Anything maybe trying to add?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things I come across quite regularly is rapid growth within businesses. And what we've got is, as the business has grown, and the demands on the personnel have grown, but the personnel hasn't grown pro rata, because it's recruiting people and getting the right people in place is not always an easy thing. But people make businesses and make businesses work. So getting the right people is absolutely essential. It's just the time it takes to recruit and all kinds of reasons why. But one of the things we'd advise is looking at and addressing, is your structure right? These are simple things, but people taking on multiple roles, and it just means that they're going to if you're doing 3 roles, you're going to you're putting a third of your time into each role.
Yeah, it's not going to be effective to do all things in one. It's just not possible. Like humanly, it's impossible to do.
And that's a dead simple thing that it's just pointing stuff as simple as that, and saying, look to the structure, look to how you manage that. And depending on the sophistication of the operation, will identify. Our purpose to identify these sort of these gaps, if you like. We all talk about gap analysis and understanding that, and that'd be one of the key things we do. You've got a load of cost and a very high level of risk, where you have we talk about what we call a single point of failure. And that's one person, it's Sabash, and Sabash seems to be doing everything. Yeah. So actually, what happens if Sabash gets hit by a bus tomorrow with no Sabash anymore? Well, who's going to pick his work up? Well, he did this, and this. So, single points of failure are quite often found in lots of businesses. And it's just supporting around making roles like that you can sort of divest some of the key parts of their work and then bolster other parts of it. So it's quite simple in some ways, but actually sometimes it's the simple things that we miss, and we miss it because a business has operated in a certain way for a length of time. So bringing the likes of ourselves in to sort of draw out basically what the structure needs to look like and where the wins will be. And you can, it's not just about numbers in terms of the cost, but that'd be a big factor where you can say, like we say, the ROI, if you like, the return on investment against creating this position, putting this person in is enormous. And for that, you've created one person into that role.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on hours and hours, but probably this, as in a couple of minutes, we could actually explain like how we approach the consulting and how we can actually help to your business. So I would say let's conclude this, Darren, because as I mentioned, it could go for hours. But it gave a sense for businesses who, or if you want to add maybe something, a minute.
I think a very brief summary is we start with everybody starts with a conversation, and then we go to a request for information. We look at then if we're impressed with the preliminary areas that we can look after, and that report include we would send would detail which aspects that we're going to do analysis around, where we think the wins can be, and then we come in, do a deep dive analysis, and then we go from there really as to the next stage of implementation of that project, whether that involves ourselves or whether that's resource put by the business. Again, these are all gates that we go through that says, bring us in. We don't, you use us at which point you use us, and at which point you can do it yourself.
Yeah, so thank you, Dan, for the summary as well. So if you guys maybe need help or struggling with anything in the supply chain, or you have issues, probably warehousing, transport, or shipping, then reach out to us and we would happy to help and see if we can help. So thank you. See you guys later.
Thank you.